Hey everyone, sorry about the late start. Good news is we have our speakers together in a room together, together at last. So we're ready to have a great conversation today. We are joined by Jeff Morris, VP of Product Marketing and Solutions at Couchbase, and our special guest today, Rahul Pradhan. He's the VP of Product and Strategy. So he's been working on Capella pretty much, I think, since the beginning. So a lot of work has gone into Capella, obviously, in the last few years. And now we're moving into, AI, and that seems to be what's on everybody's mind. So this is our opportunity to kind of talk about it. What's been going on in the industry, what the opportunities are, and then some new features, product features that we're starting to introduce or have been introduced. We brought our vector search into Capella just yesterday, so that's GA. But anyway, I don't want to take up any more time. Here to talk more about that is Jeff Morris and Rahul Pradhan, and I will kick it off to Jeff. Thanks for being here, you guys.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear us okay. And she jumped off. Anyway, hopefully everybody can indeed hear us.
Okay, I can hear you great.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, it's great to be here, everyone. And this should be a really fun session because Rahul and I, we talk about the kinds of things that we've been working on and how we're going to describe it to the market all the time. But we don't ever get to do this in public. So this should be pretty entertaining. So what I want to go through first is the key recent announcements that we've made in terms of adopting and really taking a very AI-centric approach to all of the work that we've done in about the last year, at least not or so. We'll get into Capella IQ, our coding assistant that's now built into across the product line, across the Capella product line, as a natural language processing assistant, to help you do your work inside of Capella. We announced a whole new service, Capella Columnar, back in October, and that gives us really great new enhancements for supporting real-time analytics. And I think as we get further into our discussion here, the need for real-time analytics is going to be quite high in what we're characterizing as these AI-powered applications. As Suzanne just mentioned, yesterday was the day where we shipped vector search across the Couchbase product line. It's in Enterprise Edition, Couchbase Server 7.6, as well as Capella. So if you start a trial today with Capella, you can actually try out the vector search capabilities found inside the full text search engine. And then the fourth thing that we're in beta on, we announced last week or about 2 weeks ago, is in beta currently, and we're looking for feedback and beta testers, is vector search inside of Couchbase Lite. So that gives us a leg up against everybody in the market. Anyone I've talked to over the last 6 months in the analyst community, the people who know about what's going on in the market, there's not a single other mobile database that supports vector search. So let's look real quick at Capella IQ. This was, the earliest or the first product product capability that we announced. And inside of our query workbench, you can actually have a conversation with your pick of large language model. Right now, it's ChatGPT-4 Turbo, I believe, the most recent ChatGPT. But as this evolves, we'll allow you to pick Claude or Gemini or other models that you might want to be coding with, depending on how it ends up working out. But Rahul, the IQ, it knows SQL++. Mm-hmm. It knows the programming languages that most people are programming in when they're doing their database work here. Any other thoughts about IQ here that we ought to be calling out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the key thing that with IQ that we are bringing or enabling our developers to do is the ability to contextualize your queries with the context that you're in within Capella. So, for example, the bucket that you're in, for it to be able to generate whether it's synthetic data or to give you snippets of code that are very, very relevant to the context you are in is super important. So that's the key value add that IQ brings to enhance and accelerate developers to get up to speed with Couchbase and Capella, and then start building applications as soon as they can.
Cool. And so IQ is also in Capella Columnar.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're showing how there's charting capability built into this as well. But the same query language, SQL++, is what powers Capella Columnar as well. And I think there's other interesting things about IQ, like when we're actually conversing with a large language model, we're taking the metadata about the documents and all that context that you were just describing, but we're not necessarily sharing the data in the database with the large language model. Because that's oftentimes a concern of the customer base, is they don't want to be offering up their proprietary data or their sensitive data to the LLM, but still get this work done.
Right.
And then the other, I think, really clever thing is you can actually ask IQ to debug help debug your queries. You can ask IQ for assistance in terms of building indexes. Using the index advisor, that's a pretty clever feature. And you can actually ask it to write a wrapper program around these queries in Python or JavaScript or whatever language you happen to be building your application in. So that's IQ. That was the thing we announced back in August. And we just shipped that in January. So it's inside of Capella now. And and we're getting great feedback in terms of customers who are starting to use it. But let's talk about the next, or the kinds of things you can keep doing in IQ. Learn Capella should go much more quickly. Doing that data generation and modeling of your data while you're prototyping your application, you can do there. As we mentioned, the query and index optimization and overall code development. It's got a big impact on developers.
Yeah, no, I think the impact on developers that IQ can provide is huge. It accelerates the journey. It lets you get up to speed faster, like Jeff said, but also enables you to develop your application faster. And that's one of the key tenets we have within Couchbase and for Capella, is how do we help all of you out there who are developing on Couchbase and with Capella to get started faster, to get your work done as soon as you can, without having to go around and search through things to figure out how to make them work.
Very good. So now let's talk about Capella Columnar. And this was a big project that we've been working on for quite some time. And it's really I would almost characterize it as the extension or the long-term evolution of the analytics service that we've had built into Couchbase Enterprise Edition for quite some time. But there's some really cool extensions that Columnar actually allows us to do. Number one, of course, it actually stores the data in a columnar format, so that an analytically preferred format alongside what we're storing in traditional Capella in the Magma key value store. So we've got kind of this dual storage play going on. But then, let's talk about a little bit of the data ingestion and where we can draw data from inside of Columnar.
Yeah, so like Jeff said, I think the key thing with Columnar and what we're really excited about is you have a Columnar database that now sits very closely to your operational database. The transformations that and moving of data that typically takes time and creates lag to updating your operational as well as your historical data for your metrics is now completely eliminated. So that's a key value prop that Columnar brings. The other aspect is just enabling you to get data across multiple different data sources within Columnar as well. So that's a key capability we are bringing within Capella to support streaming and pipelining, so that you can easily bring data from other data sources into our Columnar data store, and then essentially be able to run whether any of your it's AI workloads, or if you're running real-time analytics applications directly on Capella, where it now has a diverse data set that spans both your operational database as well as your historical data set merged across multiple different data sources.
And of course, one of my favorite things is it does help solve one of the longest standing issues with analytics, right? Is when you come up with an analytic idea or an insight or an epiphany, right? Usually that requires a human interaction to do something about it, right? The individual has to have oh my gosh, that's really important, I need to tell someone. But with Columnar, we're actually able to feed those analytic results directly back to Capella and the operational application that might need that information. Or as we look ahead, that AI-enabled application that might need a real-time calculation immediately, and feed that back into the application. I think that's going to be really powerful.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that's one of the key benefits that we have heard from developers who have tried out Columnar. Is the ability to get those insights back into an operational store so that it gets back to the application that actually is dependent on those. And this is even more important in the context of AI, because that's where you get into you don't want latency, you want responses as soon as you can, and your applications are getting more and more contextualized and hyper-personalized, which means you need to have those insights in the moment that the user is in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that hyper personalization and contextualization, I think, as we start talking about more of the AI enablement that we're offering, I think that's going to be hugely important for customers. So we support a variety of data visualization capabilities in Columnar. The data sources, it's basically almost any enterprise data source you happen to have, we can stream that data in. And then, of course, it's intended and invented for JSON format, right? So having real JSON analytics is an unusual capability here. It supports the JSON's flexible schema format, that zero ETL exercise of getting data immediately in and out of the operational side of the system. Very, very easy there. And then there's some other interesting things that we're also inheriting from the regular Couchbase technology, like the cost-based optimizer inside of Columnar is roughly the same optimizer that's in Enterprise Edition, and that's carrying about 4 patents right now that we're just over the last 18 months or so we've been granted for this cost-based optimization. Other things like local collections or gathering data from S3 or your other favorite blob storage, perhaps in the Azure or GCP. Of course, this is also doing the right thing in terms of analytic workload management. We'll separate the compute activities from your overall storage activities. Storage arguably is infinitely scalable for Columnar. And again, a great reaction in the install base as we're as we're rolling this out. So next, let's talk about Couchbase Server 7.6, and this is the underpinning of Capella as well as Enterprise Edition and Community Edition as well. But Couchbase 7 has evolved quite a bit over the last 2 years or 3 years. But here's the really, really good things on the far right is adding in vector search capability and our innovations there, which we'll talk a lot more about in a second. Adding in the ability to use common table expressions and recursivity to support graph traversals. That's pretty clever. I'm an old Neo4j guy, right? So I'm very fond of graph relationships. All kinds of brand new single sign-on capabilities. Better operationally, rebalancing is significantly faster. The file-based indexes for when you're rebalancing indexes, like 80% faster than it used to be. That's super impressive. And then connectors for Power BI, eventing, support for analytics. I think all of those, customers will really enjoy quite a bit. All right, so that's what we've announced. Now let's talk about the AI implications of all of this, right? And we'll sort of lay this out as first we'll go through what the opportunities we see are with building AI-powered applications. We'll talk a little bit more about our implementation of vector search with generative AI, and then why we think we're such a great fit and a great platform for all of this. So I think let's jump into that. The opportunity that we're seeing for, as you had just described, the nature of the next generation of applications, I think, is really going to change quite a bit. We already know that applications are need to operate arguably anywhere. To me, that's a code word for mobile, right? And so because that's everybody's favorite interface to technology is through their mobile device, and because of that, it's got to be really fast and highly responsive, because users can't stand watching a spinning wheel go around, especially on their device. That's almost a non-starter there. But let's talk a little bit more about this contextually proactive kind of contextualization that we anticipate being in these applications. I characterize it in many cases of, who's the individual or the things that things are happening to, in terms of application functionality. But the other ones I find even more interesting is where it's happening, and what point in time is it happening, and what's going on around you in a situationally. Like, what's the weather, and how does the weather impact what that situation is? Maybe you're out at a sporting event and it's open air, and then a thunderstorm breaks out. Mm-hmm. Your application could actually tell you the best place to go right now is this special club in the stadium, because there's nobody in there yet, but in 2 minutes it's going to be full. Right? It could give you that kind of contextualization to give you a better, ultimately, user experience. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these as well.
Yeah, no, I think the contextualization is going to be one of the key things that everybody's going to start getting used to for applications. And then if you take that example and kind of combine it with hyper-personalization, so having the context of where you are, what's happening around you, and then having it hyper-personalized to your profile or to your preferences is really the key. So again, going back to the example of it's going to rain, and here's a location you may want to go to. If that location is something that I may have visited in the past, or something that fits in with my preferences, I think that's something that's where hyper-personalization really becomes important, and that's what is going to drive some of these applications in the future.
So it's going to order my Bud Light and my chicken fingers for me too, right? So
right at the table.
Right at the table that I like to sit at and see the television because it's raining outside. All right, I'll take that. So I think this hyper-personalization notion is going to be really really clever, and the opportunity for innovation here has never been higher. Mm-hmm. Right, the new kinds of ideas that folks are going to have is really ultimately going to help, going to explode. We're going to see things we've never thought of before. Mm-hmm. So in this regard, right, this overall shift, I love your timeline here of how, in the 90s when my career started, how we were dealing in client server capabilities, the internet explosion, smart mobile applications rolling in the 2010s. That's also around the time where NoSQL databases were coming into play, and there was a diversity of NoSQL functionality, whether you were JSON or you were search or you were graph kind of thing popping up all over the place. And now this AI-powered applications, this notion is going to transform everything again. And to me, there's interesting pressures that it's going to end up putting on the rest of the market in terms of and enterprise architectures and things like that you're going to need to address in order to make an AI-powered interaction something that you are satisfied with, right? And we'll get to that in a second. But there's other things that AI is going to end up doing. Why don't you give me a couple of examples of how broad this could actually go?
Yeah, so we talked about hyper-personalization and contextualization. Now, if you kind of take this, and what AI is really enabling the ability to get reasoning into applications, for the applications to make decisions based on your preferences. So those are hyper-personalized and contextualized to the information that you have, and almost be an autonomous agent for you. So think about the case about booking travel. If you're going to go on a family trip somewhere, knowing the kind of airlines that you fly, knowing the number of people in your family, their preferences, and being able to actually generate an itinerary for you with potentially like the best places to visit, the top 3 best places that you may want to visit in a specific period of the year. That's a key thing that we're going to start applications start doing, and that's not just for travel. That's across the industry, right?
Yeah.
You talk about retail, and you getting into being able to order something online, but then what if you don't make that purchase and are driving by a brick and mortar location of the store, being able to give you an enticing offer to pull you into the store, or show you where that specific widget is something that we are all going to expect applications to be able to do.
Exactly. That's going to be kind of fun. Maybe annoying, but really fun.
It might be annoying, yeah.
But the other one I was going to jump on was, when you're trying to plan that trip with your entire family, I make sure that my kids get their chicken strips. Okay, good. So this is great. And then so let's look at like the kinds of applications we're anticipating, right? And this is, in my mind, just generation 1 or like 1.2 of what we're going to be able to do. Is that personalized custom content generation? Like, I'm a coffee snob. My life in the pandemic, my life changed when I got the Burr grinder. Instead of, it's so much better. So, but we'll end up seeing product descriptions that are absolutely tailored to your particular tastes. We're going to see all kinds of analytic capabilities. IoT devices are also going to explode in this area, where they're going to be sending information all over the place. And whether you're picking up anomalies like your Roomba ran into your cat, those kind of things are going to be really commonplace. But then let's start to talk a little bit about our semantic and hybrid search functionality, or and ultimately what's interesting to me is I think we're about to get beyond the chatbot and coding assistant kind of era of Gen AI, right? That's what we're in right now, right? Everybody's making a chatbot. Yeah. Everybody's making, doing coding assistants kind of things. Those are like the easy, the low-hanging fruit here. But I think it's some of these other capabilities that are really going to be more interesting looking ahead.
Yeah, and I think the one thing you mentioned around here is hybrid search, and that's and we'll talk more about that in the context of vector search itself. But that's a key capability that we have brought to the market now, is the ability not just to do vector search on your operational data, but to essentially do a hybrid search and mix and match different type of search patterns in order to get to the right content that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's we definitely see that. Okay, so here's the interesting thing that the audience may have noticed is we're starting to characterize these kinds of applications as they're dynamic, they change. There's features built into them that adapt to those contextualizations and those situations. So in terms of the way Couchbase has evolved, a performance-oriented application like what LinkedIn uses, where they're using us for for your LinkedIn feed, it's a great caching solution. They've written extensively about this, and it's one of our favorite references. Another one, of course, being that experience-driven organization like Carnival is, the breadth of flexibility, the breadth of capabilities and flexibility that they enjoy, because we can act as a cache, because we support profiles and catalogs and can do that text search and do time series, et cetera. That gives them a feature richness in their application that they wouldn't typically be able to get out of a single platform.
Right.
In many cases, you're doing caching through some a different database, and you're doing document storage of your account profiles in a different database, and transactions happen in a relational database because that's what anyone trusts. And search is different. All of those access capabilities are state of the art, arguably, has been to use a purpose-built database for that. But now we're anticipating and seeing a consolidation kind of start to happen. And this is what Carnival's taking advantage of, is a single pool of data that still offers all of those different rich
Yeah, and I
That's my
think
spam
to
call.
add to that, especially along the Carnival lines, is you have the capability of not just doing that when you're connected online, to be able to do it in an offline environment. Think about what Carnival does with cruises,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
To be able to do it when you're away offshore and you may not have connectivity, and still be able to sync that data back when you're onshore, get your customers the ability to look at schedules, look at the things that are there in the moment, is a key capability that a lot of our customers leverage with Couchbase and with Capella.
Yeah, most definitely. And then, as you just said, right, that the analytic capability that we were talking about with Columnar, but that gathering all of your point of sale information, like what Domino's does, but being able to accelerate the real timeness of all of that. Because before they adopted Couchbase, it took them 3 weeks to do their point of sale offer turnaround. We got it down to 3 days. But what they would really prefer is that it be real time, right? So that they could actually do things like when the Super Bowl's going on, and as each team scores, they can pivot to an accelerated offer for Kansas City or for San Francisco. That kind of adaptability is oftentimes what we mean here. So that's what we mean ultimately when we start talking about these adaptive applications. They will change. They will be context sensitive. They will support this hyper-personalization notion. And I think, as you've mentioned, in many, many times before, it's not only going to be generative AI functionality. There's going to be predictive AI functions in there as well, and all kinds of real-time information, et cetera. So this new class of application is really what we're starting to characterize. That's why we called it adaptive applications. We're not really, and I think the way we're just characterizing it is to give the audience a sense of what might be possible, and what would set these kind of applications apart from apps of yesterday. So what I really want to get into now is, let's start talking more about vector capability and using GenAI in applications, and then we'll talk about why Couchbase is a good fit for this. But the things, every time I have one of these AI conversations, what I ultimately find, and I've had customers tell me, there's two fears, fundamental fears that customers have about working with GenAI. And the number one is, and oftentimes they characterize this as being, my employees, when they're interacting with the GenAI systems, are they using my proprietary data for training the model? And that's scary to them. So they don't want to offer up proprietary and sensitive data. I have my legal counsel here advising us even on what the new regulations are that are going on in like the EU right now, because they're ahead of the curve a little bit in terms of recognizing that this personal information is still ought to be very, very personal and should be regulated in some form. So that's the one reason why, or the first fear is like, I don't want to overshare my data with the GenAI model. Well, vector search actually helps address that particular thing, to help you keep your private data private, but also at the same time inform the model basically where it might want to look, or what might want to map to in its context and its content. And then the second one, of course, is handling hallucinations. Can you trust the answer that the AI model brings back? And I think there ultimately will be a larger discussion that we'll end up having about, how do you verify an LLM's answer, right? That's going to be the next set of kind of conversations we see. But I think one of the arguments that we make is, if you will get a more trustworthy answer coming out of a large language model, if you feed it data that you trusted in the first place going in. And the example oftentimes, we end up, actually I'll show it to you in a second. So really summarizing the kind of interactions that we might have is, okay, so I don't want to overshare information when I'm, either setting up or talking to the model. And I need to trust the answer that comes back in my answer. In my example here, I've got this nice looking Carnegie, and I want to show it off, but I also want people to know that it's my car. So I want to get some shoes that match the car, right? That's a really classic similarity search that vector search can handle. but then I still have these issues of like, well, I don't really want, it can know that I have a Karmangia, but I don't want it to know where I live, sort of thing. And so the two areas of focus that we've had are in both of these. So let's talk a little bit about the trust side for a second, because this is a very, very good argument for why and how Couchbase's market has evolved really effectively over the last decade or so. But if we consider this particular situation, if you're doing things the old way and you've got databases for all these specific data access patterns that your application needs or your microservices apps need, right? You've got a cache, great. You got Redis, you got memcached. Remember the old storyline of Couchbase when the Membase people met the Couch One people. So memcached ran into CouchDB, and you got chocolate and peanut butter put together. But so you got your cache capability, you've got your document store in a traditional NoSQL database, transactions we mentioned in the relational. You've got your vector search systems, your independent vector search systems, along with search, etc. But here's my point. Is when you start to consider all of these different sources feeding variables in a prompt, right? And then you assemble that prompt and you ship it to the LLM, and it gives you an answer that's weird. How do you backtrace that? Right? How do you go back and decide which one of these particular systems had the variable that made the LLM hallucinate and made it go crazy? It's going to be nearly impossible. So that particular problem, we think, is ultimately going to end up driving a lot of evaluations of data architectures. Mm-hmm. And the way a data architecture is going to want to evolve is to continue to support these different access patterns, but do so from a common pool of data, so that you can trust what's going into the LLM because it's the same, it's your universal data kind of thing. And so, like I mentioned, right, when Couchbase started out, it was when Membase and Couch One met, right? We were kind of the original multi-purpose database. Now, and then we added SQL, and then we added full text search, and then we added analytics, and then we added time series. And now with 7.6, we've got graph traversal capabilities. 7.6 also adds vector search to the search engine. We've also added vector search to mobile. So really, I characterize this as we are potentially that universal multi-purpose database that will allow you to feed an LLM with clean data. You can trust the data that goes in because it comes from one place. And therefore your prompts will be cleaner, and backtracing it to figure out what the response should have said will be significantly easier. So this is also another kind of interesting area where when you start to think about tomorrow's applications and tomorrow's systems, we can kind of anticipate that no one's going to use one LLM as their source, right? LLMs, they take up too much energy to know everything about everything, right? There's just they can't compute all that. So we're going to see them break apart, and we're going to see a lot of subject-specific LLMs emerge into the market. We're already starting to see that. We've got like tens or 100 models right now, but there's going to be tens of thousands. And the complexity is going to shift from that underlying data architecture that I was just describing. It's going to shift to the LLMs.
Right. So I think just a quick point on the underlying data architecture, though. I think the previous picture that you had also highlights another problem of data silos and being able to make sure your data is in sync and refreshed in order for you to prompt the right from the right corpus of data to your LLMs. And that's where we are starting to see, and we are hearing from a lot of our customers about a consolidation from a database layer as well. It's instead of having to just manage and having these silos of point products, being able to have a single database that is going to let you address some of these key capabilities that your application relies on is going to be significantly important. Now, on the other side, from a developer perspective, there's also the burden of if you are actually interacting with multiple different data stores and databases, you have to have there's a cognitive overhead there of learning the language and the interaction and the semantics of each of those mechanisms, and then actually having to build something or more appropriately stitch something together to make it work, versus having a single platform that can potentially enable you to build those kind of operational applications that need these AI-powered capabilities.
Yeah, and we used to always call that the all of that interface work in between them was like running sideline to sideline and not pushing the ball downfield, right? Anyway, so let's look ahead and let's go a little deeper on vector search, what it is, why it's important. I think ultimately it just gives us another a better, stronger, faster way to do similarity kinds of searching, especially when you start to deal with unstructured text or text in general, when you start to deal with images and sounds and movies and things like that. It's allowing us to be more to operate on all kinds of types of data, but then translate it into something that a computer is going to understand. So the vectorization of figuring out all of these different types of inputs, the vectorization is just making a map for the model to follow in terms of where should it look in its own corpus, to find these kinds of things. So where we would end up saying, I want the candy apple red Ferrari for those shoes. It would say, well, here's what candy apple red looks like to me. Go find it in your own system, kind of thing. And it's, of course, it's just an array of data. So JSON is a great format for that. Did you know? Anyway, so vector here, supporting that across the Couchbase platform gives us some capabilities that we're really are only kind of imaginable for building these adaptive applications, where we can talk to embedding models. We can use data from a multitude of sources in assembling all of that, but using Couchbase as the arbiter of all of that data and to make it trustworthy. And then we can talk to models. We can also end up talking to long-standing persistent data that might be a data warehouse or a lakehouse, and help assemble that all of that within the Capella platform. So really, really powerful kind of concepts here. But I want to kind of jump back to that complexity shift again. Is we're seeing already, and the way that we're conversing, I think we should tell the audience, of course, the way we're conversing with the LLMs is through LangChain or Llama Index, right? We're using the emerging standard APIs to have these conversations so that we can support the diversity of models that are going to come up in the future, right? And we're already seeing, the number of model vendors is growing almost daily. And the number of models each one of those vendors is supporting is growing almost daily, whether it's, Bedrock has like hundreds of models already. And the notion of, the data architecture has been complex for years. And we kind of accepted that because you needed all that, to be able to use most of that data. Forrester would tell me that it's, you only use about 42% of it. But I think this complexity shift is going to be really interesting because we're anticipating, using a specialty Sora, let's say Sora, the model for image and video generation, but maybe you're going to use something else for your code generation, and maybe you're going to use another one for your language translation.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think the key driver for all of this is also the rise of what I view as the small language models. Right? So we have open source models which are not as extensive as like a GPT-4 level, but something that you could easily run within your own infrastructure to get it trained on your own data. So that's where you need to have that data available to the model, or rather for the model to move closer to the data to give you the insights and train it frequently, as well as all the capabilities we talked about with RAG and vector search in order to inform it with the freshest data. So not just that it addresses the concern around security and compliance by not letting your data go across your boundary, but at the same time, by having the model trained on your specific data within a security blast radius that you control, and also having the capability to inform the model with the latest data.
Yeah.
And that's a key capability that organizations are going to start looking at as they really start accelerating AI into their products.
I had that exact conversation with a partner yesterday, and he focuses on the financial services market. So of course he's like, they don't do cloud.
They don't do cloud, yeah.
So so the first qualifying question when I start talking about vector search is he says, so is this an on-premises solution or is it only in the cloud? Because he keeps finding situations where vendors only support models in the cloud or their vector search capabilities in the cloud. So no, right? You can deploy Enterprise Edition on premises. You can self-manage all the Enterprise Edition and all of this in your own private cloud using the autonomous operator, and you can run it in Capella, and you can run it on mobile. So I think we have the broadest vector search capability in terms of deployment options that anyone's going to ultimately want. But that balance between interaction with the models and, as you just said, the comfort and confines and security of your own environment, that's going to be a discussion we're going to have for a really long time with customers and prospects as we look ahead for this. It's just not going to stop, I suspect. All right, so we were talking a little bit earlier about this notion of hybrid search. And so sorry, I jumped ahead. So the example we're using here is, I want to match my shoes to my car. The hybrid search, if for folks who are looking at it, is, so we would have that fuzzy search about find the right color or the right shade of turquoise here to match up. So that's the vector notion. But then there could be like text and fuzzy search to say, I want my shoes to be from a brand that perhaps I can't spell. What's Hoka, right? Might be a brand nobody would, or Adidas, of course. You can misspell really, really easily. So that's kind of a fuzzy text search. But then you can have range searches, like a price range or a star rating, a quality rating. And then, all right, so the thing we were referencing earlier, your geolocation, right? Geocoordinates, like find me this thing in inventory within a 10 or 15 mile radius, right? Of course, the inventory, that's a real-time calculation we were talking about before. So all of these pieces of information are arguably going to be, functionality that an application is going to need to support, and capabilities that, require some degree of conversation with an LLM, and some not, right? Some are just regular traditional database activities. And that's, again, what makes a system like ours, which supports account profiles really, really well, which supports, the variety of what you might put in a product catalog, or I oftentimes broaden the notion. I'm like, it's just we're matching your account profile with your big catalog of stuff. And that stuff could be products, it could be airline tickets, it could be the movies that you've watched, it could be the playlists that you have, right? Arguably anything, but it's just making sure that we're able to create that super personalization, hyper personalization idea for it all. So that's hybrid search. And then now, let's kind of wind down and what makes us really well qualified to support these kind of applications. And they really, they start out with a lot of the bread and butter capabilities that Couchbase has had for forever, right? We're one of the fastest, if not the fastest database on the market, especially at scale. And to the point where I brag frequently, right? I'll race anyone. And maybe I don't win every single race, but I will be kind of like the Max Verstappen of the databases, where at scale and when you really, really need to go, that's a Couchbase problem. So enterprise speed, distributed scale with our replication capabilities, with our synchronization capabilities to get the data in the application information wherever it needs to be, right? Could be on mobile device, could be just geographically closer to where the users are. The fact that JSON is the foundational format of the platform, because that's what the programmers want to use, right? And that's kind of that's the application's data interchange format, so that's a good thing to support. But then all of those different payload types that we talked about a minute ago, whether it's a time series array or a collection of prompt variables, or the vector search coordinates, right? All of those would be a different payload, but JSON can support all of that, which is really cool. And then finally, syncing all the way to the edge and beyond, right? Where we are all operating, our as I said before, our interface to technology is on our phones and is on our laptops and the other devices that are we're kind of populating our lives with. So if you don't have that, you don't have the completeness of the platform. So that's on the one hand, and then of course the richness of data access capabilities up at that top layer, right? Where I walked through a bunch of them, but SQL, because that's what developers like. Did you know that when I ran a survey about 18 months ago to the install base, and we said, 2 questions: what was the number one reason why you bought Couchbase? And what was the number one reason why you keep Couchbase? Performance, of course, is the number one reason why they buy. But the number one reason why they keep us, SQL++, the query language.
Wow.
Right? They're like, I love that, because everybody who comes in, into the organization basically knows how to use it. Right. So a really, really big eye opener for me. And of course, our customer Phil Apurcio from Broadjump, right? He's like, look, Couchbase, because it's fast, it becomes very economical to run. And because it's got all of these data access patterns, I've got the richness of feature functionality that I need, and I can do more. I can develop it in less time. That's because of the SQL++, and do it for less money because it's really fast. It uses less resources. That's like the trifecta of value. And that's just me repeating what Phil said. So the ability for the platform to support all the capabilities is ultimately key. And then when we really start to dig into what are those core requirements of these adaptive or these AI-powered adaptive applications going to be, right? Well, diverse data, that's a JSON problem. Consumption at the edge, that's a mobile problem. The AI doesn't like complexity, and it really doesn't like low latency. Well, that's a data a data architecture problem and a performance problem. And now with vector search coming in, that's vector search is not a new database category.
Yeah,
it's a feature.
Yeah,
it's a feature. And and then ultimately the other one was the real-time calculations. I think everybody's going to end up leaving that one out, or recognize that if you can do things in real-time context, you're going to build a more powerful application in the end.
And that's where I think we didn't get into it, but the whole predictive or the traditional AI or ML, however you want to call it, comes into picture, right? The capability to run your traditional models on a vast corpus of data that can potentially reside in columnar, aggregated across multiple data sources. That is a key component of building these AI-powered applications as well.
Yeah. Oh, so I jumped over a slide. Sorry. Let's see if I can. Yeah, let's pick on mobile for a second. Right, the mobile architecture of Capella App Services and Couchbase Lite, Couchbase Mobile, really, really cool. Right, some of my favorite capabilities are all built into here. Whether it's being able to do your AI processing in the cloud, like regular Capella, or at the edge. And there's a bunch of emergent databases who will run on cloud side edge systems, right? But they're not, that is technically where the edge lies. But then push it to the device, because the time between your eyeballs and your screen, that's where you want the lowest latency possible. And in many, many cases, right, conversations with an LLM, if you just want to ask it for what's the closest thing to that candy apple red color, you could have that conversation directly from the device to the LLM and back just over 5G, without having to go back through the cloud and back through the the larger data architecture to have that conversation. That's where your latency reduction is really going to happen for mobile.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you can have a direct conversation immediately from me to the model from my device.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think you also get into the offline connectivity aspect of it. Because if you look at some of the trends that are coming up, you're seeing mobile devices and IoT devices having higher and higher computing power. The models are getting smaller and smaller, which in turn is going to enable you to run some of these smaller models on these devices, and to be able to do that kind of interaction with an AI model in the context of where you are and the data that you have on your device, whether you have connectivity or not,
Yeah.
it is absolutely going to be critical.
Yeah. Because the internet isn't everywhere.
Yeah.
And networks are not reliable.
Yeah.
Right. These are lessons that we as database people recognize very, very quickly. Okay, I think we're winding down. So earlier we had said, the breadth of capability across the product lines offered by Couchbase for supporting vector search are quite rare in the market, because we not only support the on-premises style deployment or the self-managed cloud deployment, we also have your fully managed cloud deployment in Capella, and get it all the way out to mobile with Couchbase Lite. There's not any vendor that has that breadth.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and even if I just said on both ends, right, the on-premises one all the way to the mobile one, right? That's I think a big advantage for us ultimately. And then let's talk about where you end up seeing us moving ahead in terms of the ecosystem integrations, because this is going to be where the action is going to be, right? Whether it's supporting LangChain and Llama Index right now, or getting ourselves deeper into the AWS environments, the Google environments, all of those are going to end up, as we mentioned earlier, the models is going to be where the action is.
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing for us really is, it's a vibrant ecosystem. There are lots of new emerging players doing a lot of innovative things, that when we combine that with the operational data store that we have, with the columnar capability that we are bringing, and the additional services we bring, that becomes a really powerful solution, and a combination for developers to build their AI-powered applications on.
And guess what? These adaptive applications, they need exactly the same kind of things that we've been doing all along, right? Whether it's real-time, high-volume, geo-distributed data, you got to have a database that's really screaming fast.
Mm-hmm.
The multimodal, multi-model, multi-purpose nature of the data that you're going to be using, you need something that is a multi-purpose platform. Mm-hmm. Operational, historical data, analytic data, all from the same platform also. You don't find that very frequently. Mm-hmm. Being able to do this high speed, low latency, with or without internet connectivity, on a device or in the cloud, all of those are still key requirements. That's what we just said we do. And go where the people are, go where the user is. It's got to be, ultimately, it's a mobile problem. And again, that's areas where other systems are not going to be able to play. And I think, so why we end up winning is that performance, that versatility, the mobility, of course, the recognition that many LLMs are going to be participating in this. So there's going to need to be some sort of marshal in the middle to make sure the data that's going to all of them is highly trusted, right? And is something that if you had to go back through, you're like, yeah, I could debug all of that, right? And do it at an affordable price. Because here's another really funny one, right? And I'll use Phil Lopercio as my example, right? Where he said, as soon as I switched to Couchbase, I saved like 50%. And actually, a different survey we have, I asked customers that. 53% of them, of about 200 or so respondents, said, yeah, I saved over 50% after deploying Couchbase.
Wow.
And that was true of Enterprise Edition and Capella. So it dates back to Enterprise Edition customers as well. So they're seeing that great value. Well, guess what? You're going to need that savings when you start doing AI, right? Because models are expensive. And so our argument would be you can offset some of that cost by savings using the savings you have with Couchbase to pay for your AI model interactions.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we're there, Suzanne. Last little bit is, this is why we're, able and ready to go. Ecosystem integrations we've got covered. Those broad platform capabilities we just covered. Vector across the product line. Nobody else is doing that. Speed and flexibility of Couchbase the whole time. And, there's Vector's a database feature, not a database category. So I think with that, if you've got a couple of questions we can take for the next couple of minutes and see how we go.
There are a couple of questions. One is from Paul asking for private dev testing vector search with on-premise EE 7.6. He's just wondering what kind of a license you need to, do you need a commercial license? Is there a trial period? He's just curious how that works.
In development, you can use EE to your heart's content, right? The licensing implications come when you go into production. So okay. you can grab Enterprise Edition right now, and if you want to try it, see what it does.
So there's two more questions. One is about explaining how you use LangChain, and the other one is please elaborate on queries without index. Is that something that we could break down quickly? Because we do have a developer session coming up in April where I know we are going to go over queries and we're going to go over LangChain. So I want to plug that here as well.
So the query without index is actually to allow you to, when you're in basically development, to execute a query very, very quickly without requiring the index build and execution of that. If you just want to say, does this query work? It will run it and give you an answer without needing like I said, the index call. Do you want to talk about use of LangChain here?
Yeah, I think so. With LangChain specifically, we are a vector database within their data store. So when you start using LangChain and some of the templates and frameworks that they have, you will see the ability to have you'll see Couchbase and Capella listed as one of the vector databases within their platform, and then you can start using that to store your vectors.
Great. Yeah. So a reminder for everybody before we jump off here, we're building and getting things going so fast, and there's so much to cover, right, in this arena, and it's going to continue to be that way. We're going to have a developer series with a couple of our DevRel gurus next month, April. We're still kind of building out that session because there's just so much to talk about that we want to make sure that we're hitting the most relevant topics. But I know they want to talk about vector search and embeddings. They want to talk about LangChain. They want to talk about RAG and minimizing LLM hallucinations. And they want to talk about hybrid search. So if you're interested in that, please look out for more from us. We are building that session. We're going to have more of a developer type session for that with some great how-tos. So if there's not any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and thank Jeff and Rahul. Thanks, guys, so much for the conversation. Much more to come from Couchbase. So take care, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Cheers.